Praetors are the mightiest warriors and battle leaders of the Space Marine legions, second only to the godlike primarchs in martial skill and generalship. These lords of the Imperium hold the power of life and death over whole worlds, with the direct command of entire war fleets and armies in their hands. Each is a vastly experienced warrior and warlord, unique in character, who has writ a legend in blood for themselves, and carries into battle the finest war gear and weapons known to humanity. In their ranks can be found chapter masters and lord commanders, first captains, khans and tribunes, as the traditions of their legions dictate. They are the masters of war and have commanded the hosts of the great crusade that have conquered worlds unnumbered. The Legion Champion Consul. Chosen from the best blades of the Legion, a champion bears the honour of their chapter or company in battle. They are armed and armoured in the finest panoply of war. Their sworn task is to seek out the foe's mightiest warriors and slay them as an object lesson in the Imperium's superiority. For many years, the legions maintained cadres of battle psychers in their ranks, warriors who fused these esoteric powers with a Space Marine's superhuman physical power. There were many within the Imperium's hierarchy who were troubled by such dangerous and unstable potential, and after dark events in the Great Crusade's later era, such adepts were forbidden from the use of their arts and arcane lore. With the outbreak of the Horus Heresy, however, the traitors threw off such shackles quickly, and soon the loyalists were forced to revoke the ban in order to combat them. The Legion Master of Signals Consul. A vital link between those desperately fighting and support elements of the Legion in battle. The Master of Signal is a strategic and communications specialist capable of interpreting and directing the flow of battle around them, and calling in support strikes from distant batteries and orbiting vessels. The Legion Forge Lord Consul. Masters of the machine and foundry, Forge Lords are the most experienced and skillful of the Legion's tech marines. These warrior smiths are skilled battle leaders as much as they are artisans of war, and are often appointed to the command of the Legion detachments comprising largely of tanks and armoured vehicles or battle automata, as well as serving as stewards to a Legion's dreadnoughts. The Legion Primus Medicae Consul. High officers of the Legion Apothecarian. The Primus Medicae of a Legion hold the onerous duties of both ensuring the battle readiness and physical well-being of their battle brothers, an authority in which none but a Primarch or his chosen deputy can overrule them, and in preserving, at all costs, the gene seed of the Legion from loss or contamination, even that of their lives. The Legion Siegebreaker Consul. The wreckers of cities, the bringers down of fortress walls, and the shatterers of strongholds. Siege breakers are officers of the Legion whose speciality is precisely applied destruction against strategic targets. Placed often in command of armoured spearhead assaults and frontline delivery artillery units, they prefer to closely observe their work rather than sit back behind the lines, and so are deadly efficient in adapting their forces' attack patterns from moment to moment. The Legion Chaplain Consul. The Chaplain Order, established towards the end of the Great Crusade, was intended to create a cadre of fearsome veteran warriors who would enforce a cohesion of doctrine and belief in the scattered and increasingly idiosyncratic legions far from terror. Theirs was a mortuary symbol of sacrifice, graven in the form of an ornate staff, mace or axe, the Crozius Arcanum, which served as both a badge of office and a deadly weapon. The Legion Vigilator Consul. Highly skilled as watchers and hunters among their brethren, operating often on their own or in command of reconnaissance detachments, Vigilators are the eyes of their legion on the ground, their wisdom paramount in scouting out the foe's disposition and strength and determining the best place to strike. Theirs also are the arts of sabotage and assassination, and while some legions are more inclined to such subtleties than others, all see their military value. The Legion Moritat Consul. Said by some to be no less than death incarnate, and by others to be dishonourable murderers with no place in the Imperium's order of battle. Moritats are lone killers, operating outside the Legion's usual command structures at the behest, or at least sufferance, of its high commanders. Regarded usually as dangerously unstable outcasts, perhaps created by some seldom exposed flaw of gene seed or indoctrination. They are also savage and proficient warriors, however, having become one with the act of killing, honing their superhuman reflexes to gun down the foe at close quarters to a preternatural degree. A Legion Consul Praevian is the keeper of the Legion's bound automata, those soulless machines sworn to the Legion's service and inducted into their ranks as honorary legionaries after decades of service. A practice that increased as the Horus Heresy inflicted an ever greater death toll on many Legion's ranks. Initiated into the rites of the Mechanicum to a lesser degree, these officers oversee the maintenance and programming of their charges and ensure that loyalty to the Legion and its traditions are enshrined in their core logic. On the field of battle, they march at the forefront of the inducted maniples, guiding them in the correct prosecution of war and acting as examples of true sons of the Legion. Often chosen from amongst the ranks of those veterans whose injuries have required extensive augmetic rebuild and left them ill-suited for other, more specialised roles, these warriors are often solitary individuals, given to brooding and keeping to the company of their iron brothers. It is rare in most legions for these warriors to advance higher up the chain of command, and some legions use the rank as a dumping ground for those deemed unfit for other duties. while others, most notably the Iron Hands and Salamanders, consider it an honour to serve with such unique avatars of the machine cult's craft. The Legion Delegatus Consul. A Legion Delegatus is a mid-ranking Legion officer, such as a Centurion, tasked with a specific mission by a Legion's High Command and formally deputised to act in all matters with the full weight of their commander's authority. As such, they can mobilise the Legion's resources to the full, deploy its assets, and, if performing a mission of vital strategic worth, assemble a strike force of chosen warriors. The Legion Herald Consul. As the wars of the Horus Heresy spread to consume the galaxy, billions fought and died under the banners of warlords they had never seen or heard firsthand. And even among those such as the Legion's Astartes, near religious fervour became common for those artefacts touched by Primarch, Warmaster or Regent, and given to a chosen emissary as a sign of authority and favour. The Black Shields, having obscured their heraldry or cast aside former masters, were no different, their strange sigils or blackened flags becoming totems of destruction and the forsworn. The Damocles Command Rhino. Equipped with sophisticated communication, cogniz analysis and tracking equipment, including a powerful orbital interference secure Vox transceiver, the Damocles is designed principally as a command and control vehicle to serve as a direct and all but unbreakable link between a Space Marine Legion formation in the field and its brethren elsewhere within the war zone and in high orbit above during planetary operations. Using these systems, skilled Tech Marine crew are able to read the ebb and flow of battle, call in reinforcements and supporting fire, and ward off enemy forces through signal interference and interdiction targeting. Designed to the specifications of the ever-expanding Ultramarines Legion, the Damocles was easier both to manufacture and deploy than the venerable Proteus Explorator Land Raider variants, which commonly fulfilled this role during the Great Crusade's early years, and less resource-intensive to forge and less marked upon the battlefield than the powerful Spartan Hermetica siege command vehicles which were entering service during the latter days, before the horror of civil war encroached upon the Imperium. The Damocles was just as able in its task, but unfortunately far less durable than either of its counterparts, being based on various patterns of the ubiquitous Rhino chassis. The Legion Command Squad. It is common for Space Marine commanders and champions to be accompanied in battle by a squad of highly disciplined and worthy warriors. They serve both as a bodyguard for their commander and are entrusted to carry one of the Legion's great standards, making them a rallying point on the battlefield for the Legion's troops. These chosen Space Marines have access to the finest war gear available to the Legion's rank and file, and embody the Legion's honour in war. The Legion Veteran Tactical Squad. Exceptional and experienced warriors within the ranks of the Space Marine Legions are quickly singled out and honoured with additional training in all aspects of warfare. Equipped to the highest standards, so to further amplify their battlefield power, certain legions will further separate their veterans and raise them above the ranks by inducting them into warrior brotherhoods, martial cults, or specified veteran companies. This serves to create an elite body within the legion to which other warriors can aspire to ascend, and from which future commanders are drawn. The Legion Destroyer Squad. The origins of the Destroyer Squads lay in the unification wars of Terra, but perhaps, surprisingly, not with the forces of the Emperor, but his enemies. Considered dishonourable by some legions, who make little use of them or eschew them altogether, the Destroyers are equipped with and expert in the use of otherwise prescribed and forbidden weaponry. Alongside certain factions of the Mechanicum, only Destroyer cadres have license to use such forbidden devices. Rad weapons, bioalchem munitions, and the cruel-burning horror of phosphex are among their dark arsenal. Weapons which irrevocably taint the ground on which they are used. During the long nightmare of the Age of Strife, such weapons rendered many once life-sustaining colonies uninhabitable charnel houses of the dead. Marked by their fire-blackened and chem-scalded armour, Space Marine destroyers are often shunned and deemed somehow tainted by their battle brothers in many legions, and considered at best a necessary evil, although the effectiveness of their relic weapons cannot be denied. The Legion Terminator Squad. The fruits of the tactical Dreadnought armour project, Terminator suits, are the ultimate advance in personal armour technology that the Imperium has developed. Terminator squads match these formidable developments with the finest veteran forces of the legions to form devastating frontline assault units, able to withstand the heaviest enemy fire and deliver a hammer blow to crush the foe with ruthless power. Terminator armour-equipped units are particularly valuable in heavy, close quarter fighting, such as battles fought in the deep confines of hive cities or in starship boarding actions. The Tech Marine Covenant. Tech Marines are specialist members of the Legion, whose intelligence and aptitude mark them from an early stage for induction into the rites and secrets of the Mechanicum, and so hold dual allegiances both to their legion and to the machine cult of Mars. Their role is to maintain and oversee the manufacture and supply of war gear and vehicles for their legion, as well as operate and repair the most specialised and complex weaponry on the battlefield. In this, a legion's armorum and its Tech Marine masters are vital to its ability to wage war. The Legion Apothecarian Detachment. A legion's apothecaries carry its most sacred trusts, the care of its falling and the promise of its future. Serving as battlefield healers, it is an apothecary's task to proffer aid to the wounded, return the injured back to the fray, and minister final mercy to those in need of it. From those beyond help, they have the onerous duty of recovering the Legion's gene seed zygotes for implantation in future generations of Space Marines. These tasks require skill, learning, and above all, courage. For it is one thing to fight an enemy, and quite another to turn from battle and tend to the fallen in the midst of war, when all around is a whirlwind of slaughter, heedless of safety. The Castroferum Dreadnought. Dreadnoughts are heavily armoured and armoured robotic walkers, piloted by an interred space marine whose injuries are irreparable, but who has enough spark of life and will left to endure encasement within the dreadnought's cyborg frame. From within this armoured sarcophagus, the warrior can continue to fight for his legion for centuries, perhaps millennia, striding the battlefield like one of the giants of legend, both more and less than what they were before. Dreadnoughts have their roots far back in the dark age of technology, and have endured in idiosyncratic forms both on Mars and with the techno-barbaric warlords of Terra, as well as in scattered human realms throughout the Age of Strife. Some of these individual relics are still in service, although many times re-tenanted over the millennia. Brought together now under the banner of the Imperium, many patterns of dreadnoughts exist, and it is in latter-day conjunction with the superhuman physiology of the Space Marines that this technology has reached its zenith. The Contemptor Dreadnought. Regarded by many as the most advanced and powerful pattern of dreadnought in the arsenal of the Great Crusade, the Contemptor is a relatively recent design that incorporates not only traditional dreadnought technologies, but arcane systems drawn from the ancient and guarded lore of the Legio Cybernetica of the Mechanica. Principal among these is a compact atomantic arc reactor, more powerful by far than anything of its size in Imperial manufacture. The abundance of energy it creates and generates can be used to grant the dreadnought frame speed and strength, as well as power defensive energy field systems to further increase its battlefield durability. These advantages over the older Lucifer and Castroferum pattern dreadnoughts, however, are not without their price. The Contemptor requires higher levels of maintenance than most previous designs, while the arc reactor, if breached, is prone to catastrophic failure, dooming the Contemptor chassis to utter destruction. Regardless, the Contemptor's power has found it a place within every legion, and demand for the new chassis is high. The Legion Rapier Weapons Battery. One of a number of similar designs utilised by the Imperium's armed forces, rapier carriers are semi-automated tracked weapons carriers with on-board targeting systems and power generators. Designed to mount support weaponry too large and cumbersome for even the superhuman strength of a space marine to carry, the rapier's relatively small size and mobility makes it a perfect support weapon both in defence and offence, where larger field artillery and armoured vehicles cannot go due to their size or weight. The most common armaments mounted on the rapiers of the Space Marine legions are quad heavy bolters and laser destroyer arrays for anti-personnel and anti-armour use respectively, while so-called thud gun multi-launchers are favoured for siege warfare and suppressive fire. More rarely, a legion's tech marines will also use rapier carriers as mounts for more exotic weaponry, for special operations, such as the graviton cannon. The Legion Mortis Dreadnought. The Dreadnought's weapon configuration, referred to as the Mortis sub-pattern, mounts identical weapons on both arms, granting it the ability to bring a fearsome weight of firepower to bear on its target. The Mortis is often fitted with a helical targeting array slaved to enhanced target cursing Logis engines that allow it to track its foe with unprecedented accuracy and which make it particularly deadly against enemy flyers. Initially, the majority of Mortis sub-pattern dreadnoughts were of the Contemptor type, but as the Castroferrum patterns, the Mark IV and the Mark V dreadnoughts have entered service in increasing numbers, this sub-pattern has been pressed into the anti-air role across all of the war zones of the Imperium. The Contemptor Mortis Dreadnought. Dreadnoughts are utilised throughout the Legion's Astartes, fielded as spearhead assault units able to operate in war zones and environments impassable to more conventional classes of vehicle. Most in demand of all the types of dreadnought in the arsenal of the Imperium are the Contemptors, towering war machines that utilise a combination of machine systems recovered during the Great Crusade, principal amongst them the potent and ill-understood Atomantic Arc Reactor. When the Legion's Astartes Contemptor Dreadnought Talons go to war, they are sometimes accompanied by specialist machines to protect them from air attack. Where possible, the Contemptor Mortis is fielded. For this anti-air sub-pattern of the substandard Contemptor Dreadnought is equipped with an array of powerful weapons, specifically designed to bring down enemy flyers, potent targeting auguries that allow it to lock onto and track multiple foes, as well as heavy field projectors able to withstand the inevitable storm of return fire its target is sure to unleash. The Contemptor Quartus class Dreadnought. First created during the Ulanor campaign to replace battlefield losses in dreadnoughts which far outstrip supply. The Contemptor Quartus was a variant of the highly successful Prime Contemptor pattern. Utilising many base components, the most sophisticated systems were replaced with robust, if less potent, systems which could be more readily fabricated in the field by the legions. The result was a war machine with its own unique strengths and combat characteristics, but also with a not undeserved reputation for instability. The Mechanicum disapproved strongly of this ersatz design, and once the Ulanor campaign was concluded, it was largely phased out, and surviving examples decommissioned or put to permanent slumber, as production of new Contemptor Primes and Castroferrum Dreadnoughts met the shortfall. What was destined to have been no more than a footnote in the annals of the Legion's Astartes was, however, to see a resurrection in the grinding wars of the Horus Heresy in response to a need far greater than even that which had brought the design into being. Ever more Contemptor Quartus Dreadnoughts strode into battle, either as new units or even to cannibalise Prime and Mortis pattern Contemptors salvaged as wreckage from the battlefields of the ongoing war. The Legion Tactical Squad. Tactical squads are the mainstay of the Space Marine Legions, and the force by which the Great Crusade has reconquered much of the galaxy. It is by the fighting power of thousands of superhuman warriors such as these, armed and armoured for battle in the harshest of environments and the deadliest of war zones, that the enemies of mankind have been crushed time and time again. The Legion Tactical Squad is a highly flexible infantry unit, able to attack or defend at will, assault heavily fortified positions and take and hold strategic objectives, or simply slaughter an enemy comprehensively in almost any terrain or situation. The Legion Assault Squad. Jump pack equipped assault squads are rapid attack forces whose war gear is optimised towards close quarter fighting and hit and run tactics. The use of jump packs allows assault squads to move with great speed across the battlefield and impact the enemy line with savage force, leaping past intervening terrain and open defences to engage their adversaries in bloody melee. The needs of even limited flight systems, however, preclude their use of heavy weaponry or extensive munition supplies. Jump pack equipped assault squads are not embraced to the same extent by all of the legions, for reasons of combat doctrine, temperament, or simple resource difficulties, with the Raven Guard and Night Lords being amongst their greatest proponents. Even those legions with whom they do not find particular favour, however, such as the Death Guard and Iron Hands, can still field a force of them when the need arises. The Legion Breacher Siege Squad. The most hazardous and desperate spheres of warfare, such as boarding actions amid the cold voice of space and the forlorn hope of the first wave of attackers into a breached fortress domain, can prove lethal beyond endurance, even for the warriors of the Legion's Astartes. For this reason, since the early days of the Great Crusade, specialised forms of war gear and tactics have been under continuous development to cope with these zone mortalis, and certain legions, such as the Imperial Fists, World Eaters, and the Iron Warriors, have even made these bloody modes of warfare their particular concern. Breacher Siege Squads are the units of Space Marines equipped with specialised arms and armour designed to enable them to act as a vanguard in such missions, including heavy ablative shields to resist enemy fire and specialised breaching charges and las cutters to bypass bulkheads and shatter strong points. The Legion Reconnaissance Squad. The eyes and ears of the Legion in the field, reconnaissance squads are formed from experienced Space Marines, expert in operating independently and often deep behind enemy lines. This is a task for which they are armed and equipped with a variety of specialised war gear, including long-ranged weaponry, sensor auspex, and stealth gear. They perform the function of scouts and intelligence gatherers, identifying targets and gathering information on enemy movements and strength. They also serve the Legion as pickets, saboteurs, raiders, and snipers where needed, and in open battle are expert in sudden flanking manoeuvres and infiltration attacks in support of the main force. The Legion Tactical Support Squad. Tactical support squads are mobile fire support units that replace the utilitarian bolter of their comrades with more specialised weapons, enabling them to cope with particular battlefield threats or enemies. Operating in close order with the Legion's other troops, the support squad's firepower enables a battlefield strike force of Space Marines to act with even more versatility and engage a wider range of targets on its own terms. The most common armaments used by tactical support squads are flamers, which are ideal for urban warfare, bunker and trench clearance, as well as eradicating Xenos life forms from an area. Rapid-firing rotor cannons are used against large numbers of lightly armed foes, thermic energy melters for tank busting, and where available, plasma and volkite weapons against the most heavily armoured and monstrous enemies. The Rhino Armoured Personnel Carrier. The Rhino is the most widely used armoured personnel carrier in the Imperium. Based on ancient STC technology, the fundamental design is robust, reliable, easy to maintain, and its adaptive power plant can run off a wide variety of fuels with varying degrees of efficiency, making it perfect for the wide-ranging armies of the Great Crusade. Produced in the thousands and with several distinct patterns in common use, the Demos being the most widespread in the Space Marine legions, it has also served as the basis for a number of other war machines. The Space Marine Legion Drop Pod. Drop pods are self-contained, recoverable orbital descent capsules, each designed to carry a squad of Space Marines, with modified versions fitted to carry dreadnoughts and other gear. They are used for surprise attacks and combat drops into the midst of active war zones, with Space Marines warships showering them down like ordnance from the edge of space towards their target. Drop pods are armoured and reinforced to withstand the rigours of re-entry and ground fire to some extent, but their only true defence is speed, and unaugmented humans have little chance of surviving flight and landing within one. The Space Marine Legion Dreadnought Drop Pod. Developed alongside the more common Legion Drop Pod in general service, specifically designed Dreadnought Drop Pods, such as the Lucius pattern Heavy Drop Pod, are somewhat larger than the standard drop pods of the Legion's Astartes, and have a more powerful engine, allowing for a dangerously meteoric descent to the battlefield. This serves to protect their cargo during approach and allow it to strike with unprecedented speed. The stresses involved, however, are such that only the heavily armoured and protected shell of a dreadnought could hope to survive the descent and impact with the ground, without being wrecked or pulverised. Dreadnought drop pods are still highly valued by many legions, especially considering the attrition rate they commonly suffer in battle, while others inherently dislike the design, lacking as it does armament or the adaptability of more mobile, multi-role designs, such as the Deathclaw pattern recently made available. The Legion Seeker Squad. Seeker squads are comprised of specialist force of Space Marines whose principal task on the battlefield is to identify an enemy's command structure, its warlords, officers, priests, demagogues, whatever they may be, and slay them with a well-placed bolt round while the battle rages around them. The Alpha Legion are said to have first crystallised this tactic and squad configuration, which has since, with the Emperor's approval, spread to the other legions. Although its use sits poorly within the combat doctrine of some, Seeker Squad members are chosen primarily on pure merit as the best shots in their legion, as a Seeker strike force will often be forced to rely on the briefest window of opportunity to take down their targets at close range, rather than have the luxury of distance and able sighting as a sniper in a reconnaissance squad might have. To aid them in the kill, Seeker squads are usually equipped with special issue ammunition to better deal with their chosen victims. The Legion Outrider Squad. Outriders are mechanised Space Marine reconnaissance squads who take to the field mounted on ruggedly constructed, all-terrain armoured ground bikes and scramblers. Used for scouting missions, as well as rapid encirclement and hit-and-run attacks behind enemy lines, the chief advantage of the Outriders is speed, their bikes enabling them to cover ground far quicker than infantry and go where heavier vehicles cannot. The Legion Attack Bike Squadron. Attack bikes are larger, often two-man bikes, which expanded chassis can accommodate a single heavy weapon, making for a formidably armed and swift, if somewhat fragile gun platform. Attack bikes often accompany Outrider units to provide fire support, and are also deployed in squadrons as a high-speed strike force to ravage larger, slower enemy units and destroy isolated armoured vehicles with concentrated weapons fire. The Legion Jetbike Skyhunter Squadron. Skyhunters are feared strike units, which use sophisticated and powerful jet bikes as mounts. These grav-impeller-assisted, jet-engined propelled craft are more akin to compact aircraft than ground bikes, and are able to maintain great speeds for extended periods of low-altitude flight. Their lift strength is sufficient not only to carry a heavily armoured Space Marine and his war gear aloft, but also carry a variety of heavy weapons mounts and stocks of ammunition, giving the Skyhunters extremely potent firepower. The jetbike patterns in service with the Space Marine Legions are modifications of designs which considerably predate the Imperium, and given the materials required to make and maintain them, such as the iridium calcite alloys needed to fabricate the hyper-efficient suspensor repulsor plates required for flight, demand for them by the legions has always outstripped supply. The Primaris Lightning Strike Fighter. A relatively recent addition to the armories of the Great Crusade, the Primaris Lightning Strike Fighter is a high-speed suborbital fighter craft designed for high-speed interception, interdiction and surgical strike rolls. Created by the Archmagos Arbiter Psychosk Thule, master of the sovereign forge world of Voss, the Primaris Lightning represented a new paradigm in aero warcraft, being built around a powerful forced plasma ramjet drive and optimized for the most sophisticated munitions and avionics systems available. While exceeding all similar patterns in service of its size, for speed and payload capacity, it was extremely costly to produce, proved difficult to maintain and difficult to handle by all but the most experienced pilots. Flaws Psychosk attributed purely to the failure of the weak flesh. These factors, however, saw the pattern's issue limited to the elite close support units of the most well-resourced legions and the Mechanicum itself. And while a degraded, if more easy to operate and maintain version of the Lightning was rumoured to be under construction just prior to the outbreak of the Horus Heresy, this reduced pattern played no part in the conflict. The Legion Tarantula Sentry Gun. Possessed of formidable firepower, automated weapons platforms and sentry gun batteries are used by many of the Imperium's diverse armed forces to take on the mundane duties of point defence and security, both planetside and aboard ship. The most common of these designs is the Tarantula, whose ease of construction, multiple weapons configurations, and general reliability have made it a staple of the arsenals of the Great Crusade, and a well-regarded, if perhaps inglorious, tool of war. The Space Marine legions in particular make use of tarantulas in a forward deployment role and see them as entirely disposable assets, often utilising them in the thick of battle to defend a forward position, draw out enemy forces for attack, or even to guard a withdrawal or pin an enemy force during a feint. To this end, tarantulas may be dropped into forward positions on the battle lines immediately prior to suspected engagement via hovering servo carriers or placed by reconnaissance forces under concealment to provide an unpleasant surprise for an attacker. The Anvilus Pattern Dreadclaw Drop Pod. The Anvilus Pattern Dreadclaw Drop Pod was initially designed to insert Legion Space Marine boarding forces onto enemy void craft in the midst of battle. As such, they have minimal profile and a heavily armoured hull, designed to survive fire from smaller ship-based close defence weaponry, while a series of melter cutters allow it to slice through a ship's outer hull and deliver its cargo into the heart of a vessel. Unlike some earlier boarding craft, which were incapable of returning their cargo to friendly ships, the Dreadclaw is also fully capable of operating as an independent dropship. Indeed, many legions favour using the Dreadclaw in this role instead of the more common Storm Eagle, dropping from the sky like a flaming comet and employing the craft's thermal jets and melter cutters to scorch the landing zone clean before disembarking the assault troops contained within. Though lacking in any subtlety or elegance, this tactic is undeniably effective, and many crews have developed a dark notoriety for their skill at reckless low-altitude strafing runs, leaving great swathes of the enemy's lines aflame with each pass. The Legion Land Speeder. Mainstays of most Space Marine Legion armories, land speeders are high-speed reconnaissance and rapid attack skimmers that utilise anti-gravity technology to achieve extraordinary battlefield mobility and speed. As lightly armoured two-man craft, they require the kind of skill and reflexes to operate at peak performance that only a Space Marine can bring to bear, and rely more on their extreme manoeuvrability and speed for survival than durability. Land Speeder squadrons provide a Space Marine force with a flexible core of rapidly deployable firepower, and make for highly able tank hunters and close air support units. As a result, mixed formations of land speeders are often called upon to operate as a rapid reaction force, held in reserve to quickly intercept enemy counterattacks. Striking fast and hard, they are particularly apt to fight delaying actions, whilst the rest of a Space Marine force moves into attack positions or redeploys, and are able to use their speed to retreat successfully if needed from the very teeth of a foe. The Legion Storm Eagle Assault Gunship. The Storm Eagle Assault Gunship is one of the most numerous designs found in a Space Marine Legion air fleet. A dedicated tactical strike unit, its primary roles are orbital assault deployment of Legion infantry forces and low-level ground attack. The Storm Eagle is a rugged and durable machine, very heavily armed for its size and considerably protected by armour plating. Although it lacks the speed and manoeuvrability of true fighters and bombers, in operational use it proved itself an extremely flexible vehicle, serving capably as a long-range transport, orbital shuttle, scout and interceptor when called upon to do so, in addition to its main battlefield roles. First constructed on Terra over the course of the Great Crusade, principal manufacturing of the Storm Eagle shifted to the forge worlds of Anvilus, Galatea and Tigris, whose vast output was sufficient to provide all of the Space Marine legions and the Custodian Guard with extensive squadrons of these well-regarded and adaptable craft. The Xiphon Pattern Interceptor. The Xiphon Interceptor is a Legion's Astartes void atmospheric combat craft with an ancient lineage. Its origins are long lost, but it shares many of its component STC patterns with craft as diverse as the Ambut Voyager and the Thunderbolt Fighter. While unique variations have been encountered on lost human colonies or in the hands of nomadic corsairs, the Legion's Astartes Xiphon was modified from that of the Paramedandrith Enclave. brought into compliance in 806 M30 and produced at Celestrix until its annihilation in 914 M30. While the Enclave had used Psyger-augmented pilots to withstand the extreme stresses generated by the Interceptor's performance, it was found that Space Marines could successfully operate the craft without harm, although this limitation prevented the Xiphon from use within the wider Imperial fleet. Though potent and heavily armed, the Xiphon was complex, had limited operational range compared to the larger Wrath, as well as being ill-favoured by the Mechanicum. By the time of the late Great Crusade, it had all but fallen out of frontline service, except within the Ultramarines and Dark Angels legions. The shockwaves of the Horus Heresy, however, was to see many legions press their reserves of the Xiphon back into battle. The Legion Javelin Attack Speeder. Javelin attack speeders share many of the advanced systems found in the jet bikes of the Legion's Astartes Skyhunter strike squadrons, and as such are both rare and highly valued. Utilising a range of anti-grav impeller technologies so esoteric that some amongst the Mechanicum regard them with overt distrust. Javelin attack speeders are time-consuming to construct and difficult to repair should they sustain battle damage. Nevertheless, they are fast, highly manoeuvrable, have an extended operational range, and perhaps most importantly, are able to carry a heavy payload of weapon systems. All of these characteristics ensure that these rare attack vehicles remain in high demand amongst the Legion's Astartes, as well as other elite formations, such as the Legio Custodes and the Sisters of Silence. The Legion Jetbike Skyslayer Support Squadron. Designated as a high manoeuvrability fire support unit for Space Marine Legion reconnaissance and rapid strike formations, the Skyslayer Support Squadron comprises heavily armed variants of the Sky Scimitar jetbike under the command of experienced pilots. The concentration of firepower, most often either in the form of multi-melters for tank hunting or plasma cannon to deal with heavily armoured infantry, contained within a Skyslayer squadron is extremely formidable, particularly when used in coordinated, high-speed flanking attacks. Strategically, the Skyslayer's disadvantage is that they lack the resilience of emplaced artillery or mechanised armour, or even the ability of infantry support units to easily exploit terrain to a defensive advantage, and so cannot afford to be caught in enfilade or close engagement with numerically superior foes. The Deathstorm Drop Pod. Deathstorm drop pods were first conceived and prototyped by the Raven Guard Legion, who sought to augment the firepower of their precision orbital assaults. The Raven Guard Legion's preference for such surgical strike tactics would, upon occasion, leave them at a disadvantage in the case of both protracted engagements and in assaulting very heavily fortified targets where heavy units, such as Legion tanks and artillery, could not be deployed. This opened the Legion up to levels of casualties during some successful drop pod assaults that their Primarch, Corax, could not countenance. The Raven Guard's solution spoke much to their own nature and preferred tactics. A weapon that would strike with merciless swiftness and expend its force in a lethal fury that left little need for prolonged endurance. Built around a standard drop pod chassis, the Deathstorm pattern uses rapid-firing missile launchers to blast an area in a massive volley of weapons fire upon landing, clearing the way for the Space Marines to assault in their wake. The machine spirit-targeted weapons of the Deathstorm will then continue to sweep the landing zone and provide fire support, although at much reduced firepower, the bulk of their ammunition already expended upon their arrival. The Legion Heavy Support Squad. Heavy support squads provide the Legion's infantry with mobile Space Marine portable firepower, sufficient to bring down hordes of enemy troops or smash armoured vehicles apart in withering hails of weapons fire. Although tanks and field artillery outrange and outgun heavy support squads in most cases, as well of course often being much more heavily protected by armour plate, heavy support squads have all the flexibility of the infantrymen to their advantage, and are able to disperse in terrain, climb heights to attain better fields of fire, and go where a battle tank, or even a dreadnought, cannot. The Predator Battle Tank. The Predator is perhaps the best known and most widespread variant of the basic Rhino chassis, equipped with superior armour protection and firepower, but sacrificing the Rhino's troop transport capacity entirely. It is an effective and versatile medium tank with a good balance of speed, firepower and protection, and whose robust design can field a wide variety of armament configurations, with the standard and by far most common being a rapid-firing, turret-mounted autocannon. The Predator can also be fielded either with or without additional external sponson-mounted weaponry, with each sponson either mounting a single heavy bolter, heavy flamer or las cannon as part of a modular unit. The type of sponson weaponry fitted often reflects the expected conditions of threat within a given war zone, where heavy infantry resistance is predicted, such as in battle against the Orcs for example. Heavy bolters are most favoured, while las cannon are equipped where armoured vehicles are expected to predominate the opposition's forces. The Land Raider. The Land Raider is regarded by many as the finest armoured fighting vehicle of its class in the Imperium's arsenal, if not the galaxy, and the mainstay battle tank of the Space Marine legions. It is a phenomenally powerful war machine. Its multi-layered composite armour and reinforced hull is all but impervious even to heavy weapons, and it has no truly vulnerable areas, being a sealed unit designed to resist enemy attack from any approach. Intended to serve in almost any environment as both war machine and exploration vehicle, the Land Raider can operate freely in war zones ranging from acid swamps to rad deserts to Arctic wastes without any noticeable impediment to its performance. And it can even operate underwater and in hard vacuum, ensuring that there is no open battlefield on which its armoured wrath cannot be unleashed. The Land Raider is a masterwork that heralds back to the might of mankind during the lost High Dark Age of technology. And since the rediscovery of its STC in the vaults of Mars, several patterns have been established in widespread use, varying the balance of the Land Raider's battlefield role from armoured explorer to assault tank to command and control vehicle, but all maintain the core components of its established form and function. The Legion Fire Raptor gunship. A variant of the Storm Eagle, the Fire Raptor gunship was created with the aim of providing overwhelming aerial firepower to Legion Astartes assault forces. These relentless craft can reduce any attacking force to ruin in a devastating rain of bolt shells and high explosive rockets, and are in use amongst virtually every one of the legions. In addition to twin nose-mounted Avenger bolt cannon and an array of rockets or missiles, the Fire Raptor replaces the capacious transport bay of the Storm Eagle with ammunition and targeting cogitators for 2 independent ball turrets. Each of these sophisticated turrets is equipped with a gyroscopic array and crewed by a dedicated Space Marine gunner, allowing each to strike separate targets with pinpoint precision, even while the gunship moves at flank speed. The Fire Raptor first gained renown during the campaigns against the Orcs that infest many of the systems now claimed by the Emperor. The ferocious firepower of these craft proved pivotal on numerous engagements against the overwhelming numbers of Orcs encountered on those worlds, reducing wave after wave of Orc warriors to bloody ruin. The Achilles Alpha Land Raider pattern is the most durable vehicle currently in service with the Legion's Astartes. These vehicles shrug off weapon strikes that would cripple even such titanic weapons of war as the mighty Fellblade, and are proof against even the most toxic environment. The weaponry of these vehicles is no less impressive, each being armed with a quad launcher tooled with exacting precision and capable of launching shatter shells as well as the more common frag shells. Those legions that maintain Achilles Alpha pattern Land Raiders utilise them as the spear point of any assault under fire, trusting the vehicle's near impregnable armour and punishing weapons array to break any defensive position. Each Achilles Alpha is assembled under the direct oversight of a Forge Worlds Macrotech Magos and is the result of months of painstaking labour. And so costly are they to produce that no legion fields more than a handful of such vehicles. The more common Achilles pattern Land Raider is derived from the design of these mighty engines of war, a lesser copy that can be reproduced with the expenditure of fewer resources, but which possesses only a fraction of the original's might. The Legion Artillery Tank Squadron. As cohesive fighting forces, able to operate and conquer in any theatre of war, the Space Marine legions maintain their own mobile heavy artillery units, although to nowhere near the extent that the hosts of the Imperial army do in terms of numbers. This is in no small part due to the fact that static warfare does not suit the character or indeed the strengths and advantages of the Space Marines themselves, although there are those whose extensive practice of siegecraft, such as the Imperial Fists and Iron Warriors, lends them more reliance and trust in the big guns. The most common artillery vehicles employed are the relatively light and mobile Whirlwind multiple missile launcher tank, which has the advantage of being based on the Rhino chassis and therefore easy to repair and support. The long-range cannon-armed Basilisk, excellent both for protracted bombardments and as a defensive weapon against enemy armour. And the heavy Medusa, which carries a short-ranged but extremely powerful siege mortar. The Legion Vindicator Siege Tank. As the Horus Heresy erupted across the Imperial, both sides fielded ever more potent and specialised weapons. In the days of the Great Crusade, Legions Astartes war machines had been configured to defeat the many and varied foes encountered as the Imperium expanded, from ravening Xenos monstrosities to devolved human empires. The wars of the Age of Darkness, however, saw the Legions Astartes confront a foe they had never before been called upon to fight: other Legions Astartes. Thus began a rapid and escalating battle for technological supremacy as weapons created to defeat other Legions Astartes war machines were developed and rushed into service, often utilising such ubiquitous and highly flexible platforms as the Rhino and Land Raider. The Legion Spartan Assault Tank. An armoured assault transport of truly massive proportions. The Spartan is a heavy tank whose use is unique to the Space Marine Legions and the Mechanicum, and whose design bears clear connections of lineage to that of the Land Raider. The Spartan is a huge armoured conveyor whose purpose is to carry a large contingent of troops into the heart of the enemy, weathering fire that would be the death of any lesser vehicle. Although its armoured and sealed shell is as legendarily durable as that of a Land Raider, the genius of its design is such that the greater proportion of its interior space is given over to its carrying capacity, which is greater than any save the super heavy transporters such as the Gorgon, favoured by the Imperial army, while being considerably faster on the battlefield thanks to its reactor-driven motive drives. Its armament is nevertheless still fierce, featuring sponson-mounted quad las cannon, making it an able tank destroyer, and secondary armaments of defensively mounted heavy bolters or heavy flamers, enabling it to sweep infantry from its path. The Spartan takes pride of place in the armories of many legions, although its size and the scale of materials required to produce it, which exceeds that of most super heavy tanks, makes it far less common than the Land Raider in operations. The Legion Cestus Assault Ram. Assault rams are attack craft intended to participate in close-range boarding actions in space and also to act in a secondary role
as drop assault vessels for direct orbital attack. Smaller in size and displacement than many gunships, the System Pattern assault ram is a densely constructed, shield-augmented block of armour designed to effect a boarding by burning and smashing its way through an enemy ship. The revelations brought on by the discoveries of Arkan land enabled the augmentation of the venerable design, allowing it to be used in high-velocity, direct orbital attacks, as well as operate as a heavy battle skimmer in support of ground operations when called upon to do so. As an assault ram, the Cestus is designed and outfitted with a highly armoured forward superstructure buttress with inertial and recoil compensation systems, specifically built to allow the vehicle to crash into its target, thus creating a breach into which its complement of Space Marines can immediately advance. Its main armament is similarly direct, with a recessed forward firing magna melter intended to weaken the hull armour of a target spacecraft, also providing it with a devastating close-range weapon against enemy tanks and bunkers in ground operations. The Legion Sicaran Venator tank destroyer. The Sicaran Venator is a variant of the Sicaran battle tank, which saw extensive use in the opening battles of the Horus Heresy. This pattern replaced the turret-mounted accelerator cannon of the Sicaran with a powerful neutron laser. When coupled with the Sicaran Venator's ferocious speed, the neutron laser is an ideal anti-tank weapon, slicing apart armoured hulls with casual ease and blasting internal compartments and crew with atomic fire. Conceived in the fires of war, Sicaran Venator is a result of all the knowledge gleaned from the unnumbered battles of the Great Crusade. Its advanced neutron laser is specially designed to provide the Legion's Astartes with superior firepower, enabling it to destroy any and all Xenos threats that might be encountered by the expanding armies of the nascent Imperium. At the time that Horus began his rebellion on the black fields of Istvan V, the Sicaran Venator had only just entered full production, and only limited numbers had been inducted into the various legions. Despite the relative rarity of these vehicles, their combination of durability, speed and firepower ensured that they'd proved pivotal in a number of battles, surviving where lesser Predator or Vindicator tanks did not. The Legion Sicaran battle tank. One of the most advanced armoured units in the arsenal of the Great Crusade, the Sicaran battle tank was the exclusive province of the Space Marine Legions. Its introduction was ongoing at the outbreak of the Horus Heresy, and the War Master ensured that many examples of this new tank found their way into the armories of those legions that would side with him before the outbreak of the Civil War. Designed in concert between the Primarchs Ferrus Manus and Robert Guilliman, alongside the Magos of the Mechanicum Tempestora sect, the Sicaran utilises component technologies from various STC patterns such as the Rhino, Land Raider and Hephaestus to create a high-speed destroyer tank to complement the more commonplace Predator and Land Raider designs. The primary armament of the main Sicaran variant is the sophisticated Heracles pattern accelerator autocannon. Technologically akin to the heavier caliber ordnance mounted on the Fellblade Super Heavy tank, it is a superior, rapid firing and highly accurate weapon. It fires shells at far higher velocities than a standard autocannon, enabling it to successfully track and engage swift-moving targets and pinpoint vulnerabilities in enemy armor with lethal precision. The Legion Charybdis Assault Claw. Employed by many legions as their primary ship-to-ship assault craft, the Charybdis is a monstrous drop pod capable of carrying large assault forces through the void and mounting significant firepower to blast a path through defending small craft. The arrival of a flight of these ominous craft, boarding hooks extended as they approach their target, signals the end for the crew of any vessel that dares oppose the Legion's Astartes. As a fully operational dropship, Charybdis assault claws also serve as surface-to-orbit transports, a role that allows them to use the firepower of their storm launchers and melter cutters to scour clean their chosen landing zone before disembarking their deadly cargo into the midst of the enemy's shattered formation. Nor do these craft serve solely as infantry transports. Many more aggressive commanders employ the Charybdis as an effective tank hunter, ramming enemy armour in daring low-altitude attack runs. Clamping hold with the Charybdis's hook claws and burning through even the thickest ceramite plating with melter cutters designed to breach the hulls of starships. The Leviathan Siege Dreadnought. Developed in the highest secrecy, not on Mars, but on Terra, the Leviathan is an alternative development of the highly successful Contemptor. It represents hybrid technologies, some of which it is believed date back to the Age of Strife, which rumours had it were created by the hand of the Emperor directly. The resources required to produce one were immense, equal perhaps even to an Imperial Knight. Made available to the legions only in limited quantities before the outbreak of the Horus Heresy, they were highly valued and recognised as savagely powerful siege and hunter-killer units. They placed an ultimately lethal strain upon their occupants, the Leviathan's incumbent burning brightly but briefly in their second life. Many in the Mechanicum were deeply uneasy over the design, seeing it as purpose-designed to match and indeed destroy the Mechanicum's own battle automata in some future unforeseen crisis or dispute. During the Horus Heresy, loyalists with access to Terra were able to obtain new Leviathan dreadnoughts, although never many, while traitors and isolated forces were reduced to marshalling their few Leviathans carefully or hunting down the relics of the dead from battlefields to be recommissioned. The Derideo Pattern Dreadnought. The Derideo was developed as an outgrowth of the same project to improve upon the fusion of Terran and Mechanicum technology which gave birth to the first Legion's Astartes dreadnoughts, such as the Castroferum and Lucifer patterns. It shares many core components and systems with the hugely successful Contemptor class, but rather than being a general assault unit, the Deredeo is an expressly designed heavy weapons platform intended to combine superior firepower with the flexibility and durability of a dreadnought chassis. Deployed in limited numbers to each of the legions, the Deredeo was treated as a specialist unit, as it proved highly resource intensive to produce and maintain, but its undoubted survivability and killing power saw a resurgence in its use after the initial wave of internecine strife during the Horus Heresy, and it was in high demand by traitor and loyalist alike from the few Forge worlds able to fashion them. The Legion Whirlwind Scorpius. The term whirlwind is used amongst the Legion's Astartes to describe a range of vehicle-mounted multiple missile launcher systems, many of which were recovered during the Great Crusade and were undergoing frontline trials with various units before the Horus Heresy swept across the galaxy. The Scorpius was a pattern that had only recently entered service, having been created at the behest of the Space Wolves Legion to aid in the campaign against the fortified bastion cities of the Xenos Galusian subrealms. Fighting alongside Legion Predators, with which it shares many common armour and drive systems, the Scorpius proved itself well suited to such high-intensity operations, and had been approved for service across the entire Legion's Astartes before the outbreak of the war. The Legion Malkador Assault Tank. A truly ancient design, dating back to the wars of the Age of Strife on Terra. The Imperial production model of this heavy tank pattern was given the name of Malkador the Sigillite, right hand of the Emperor, during the early days of the Great Crusade, when thousands of these war machines rolled off the production lines of Mars and Voss. Although not as heavily armed as Goliaths such as the Baneblade, or as well protected as the Land Raider that would come to largely replace it in Legion service as a main battle tank, the Malkador nevertheless possesses a number of advantages to its design, the principal of which is its battle speed, which is truly formidable for a tank of its size, thanks to a sophisticated, if somewhat temperamental, drive system. By the time of the Horus Heresy, many Malkador tanks had been relegated to strategic reserves and second-line Imperial Army units, replaced by newer, more powerful designs. Although the demands of mankind's galaxy-wide civil war soon brought them back into the fray, while their availability saw them used as test beds for a variety of new variants designed to plug gaps in supply and resource. The Space Marine Legion Falchion Super Heavy Tank Destroyer. The Falchion utilises a potent weapon combining technologies used in the Fellblade and the Shadow Sword Super Heavy Tank. The Falchion's twin-mounted Volcano Cannon is one of the most powerful vehicle-mounted anti-tank weapons in the Imperium's arsenal, and it requires such an investment in resources to construct just a single example that its use is limited to the Legion's Astartes. Even then, the falchion is so rare that most legions maintain but a handful, reserved for use against the largest of enemy war machines. The falchion was developed long before the outbreak of the Horus Heresy, and as such, its prey was not the enemy titans it would later see such extensive combat against. As the Great Crusade expanded ever outward, the expeditionary fleets encountered a staggering array of foes, some of whom were of a truly gargantuan scale. The formless overlord beings of the Poison Wretch were so massive they could crush entire armies with their bulk, but they were set to ravening flame by the touch of the Ultramarines Falchion's volcano cannons. When the gravity-defying mountain fortresses of the Thulos Deeps rejected compliance, a company of Iron Hands Falchions burned them and their occupants from the skies, scattering all to rubble, such that no stone was left standing upon another. The Legion Stormblade Super Heavy Tank. The Legion Stormblade is a variant of the Imperial Army Super Heavy Tank, constructed on the Forge World of Lucius and equipped with a mighty plasma blast gun. This weapon occupies a tactical niche between the much heavier turbo laser destructor carried on the Shadow Sword and similar but lighter weapons carried on smaller vehicles. The plasma blast gun is simpler to maintain and supply than the turbo laser, giving the tank an extended operational range, and its Space Marine crew are a lot more resistant to the heat and radiation generated by its enormous reactor array than the crews of Imperial Army Stormblades. The majority of legions maintain a stock of Stormblades amongst their super heavy tank formations, although some only utilise them as legion reserves and do not commit them to the line as a matter of course. The Iron Warriors and the Iron Hands have both been known to utilise armoured vanguards comprising Stormblades, often flanked by Predators, and more recently, Sicarans. The Legion Fellblade Super Heavy Tank. Based upon the same standard template construct pattern as the Baneblade and Deathhammer Super Heavy tanks, which form the mainstay of the vast armoured brigades of the Imperial Crusade Army, the Fellblade was a more advanced variant that first saw widespread service, particularly in the Space Marine legions, in the last decades before the nightmare of the Heresy. The Fellblade was most notable for its use of both Mechanicum atomantic arc reactor technology and a reinforced Metaplas alloy chassis superior to that of the Baneblade, and also the employment of an advanced accelerator cannon as its primary armament, all fruits of technologies restored to humanity by the later conquests of the Great Crusade. The Legion Glaive Super Heavy Special Weapons Tank. The Glaive, or Fellglaive as it is sometimes known, is a super heavy tank pattern related to the Fellblade, but beyond the obvious surface similarities, the two tanks are very different. The reason for this divergence lies with the Glaive's primary weapon system, the fearsome and arcane Volkite carronade, a device of the Mechanicum whose design is said to originate on Mars in the wars of the Age of Strife. It was not without some acrimony that the Forge Lords agreed to the Emperor's demand for a Legion tank to be created that utilised this weapon. The need, however, was great, and the glaive was first deployed against the Apex Exothon codified as the Catachi Diabolum, which had proved such a thorn in the Great Crusade's side. Later, the glaive proved its worth both against the Orc hordes and the stranger Xenos monstrosities encountered as the Emperor's crusading armies penetrated the murderous zones surrounding the galactic core. The effort of constructing practicable numbers of super heavy tanks around to the Volkite carronade is considered well worth the staggering expenditure its resources required. For multiple targets, and even the largest of Xenos abominations are struck down by its ravening beam before even a portion of its energy is dissipated. The Legion Thunderhawk Transporter. The Thunderhawk Transporter is a support variant of the standard Thunderhawk gunship that has recently entered into service with the Space Marine Legions. It may be used to quickly deploy or redeploy armoured vehicles and deliver supplies in heavily contested war zones where less well armed and armoured craft would prove extremely vulnerable. Rapidly becoming a relied upon workhorse of the Legions, a Thunderhawk transporter can carry 2 Rhino-sized vehicles or a single Land Raider-sized vehicle. It can also be used to carry an underslung supply pod and other useful equipment such as a winch system for recovering drop pods after a battle deployment. The Legion Thunderhawk Gunship. The Thunderhawk Gunship was a development of the later Great Crusade, intended to bridge the gap in size and capacity between smaller designs, such as the Storm Eagle, and the larger and more costly Stormbird and Argo dropships. Designed to operate in atmosphere and void space, it combined the roles of orbital troop lander, heavy gunship, and medium bomber, and proved a highly successful addition to a Legion's fleet. With the outbreak of the wars of the Horus Heresy, both sides ramped up production of their Thunderhawks to meet the ongoing demands of the war. The Legion Cerberus Heavy Tank Destroyer. An experimental variant based upon the Spartan chassis. The Mechanicum used the Spartan's internal capacity to mount a prototype neutron laser projector and the sizable atomactic arc reactors and radiation shielding needed to operate the weapon. The weapon technology itself had been retro-engineered from Dark Age of Technology battlefield wreckage, recovered at great cost on the Forbidden Sphere of Deep Hyades 6 by Mechanicum explorators out of Galatia, and some controversy was evident about both its provenance and safety for wider dissemination by the Mechanicum. Despite its instability, the neutron laser offered a potential rival weapon to the more common turbo laser systems found on Titans and the Shadow Sword Super Heavy Tank Destroyer, which was both more compact in size and possessed of enhanced ability to inflict collateral damage. Shortly before the outbreak of the Horus Heresy, preliminary detachments of the Cerberus had been delivered into the service of a number of Space Marine legions for comprehensive battlefield testing and trial, and were soon pressed to turn their destructive power against the Imperium's own war machines, rather than that of the alien. The Legion Typhon heavy siege tank. Named for the great beast of Terran myth, this siege tank was developed by the Martian Mechanicum simultaneously with the Spartan, with which it shares a basic hull, armour and chassis design. The Typhon is a mobile gun platform of prodigious strength and carrying capacity, designed to operate a single massive piece of siege artillery, the Dreadhammer cannon. The design itself was created in response to a request from the Primarch Perturabo of the Iron Warriors, and also with his direct involvement, who demanded a war engine created for the Space Marine legions that could rapidly deploy such fortress-breaking firepower to the battle line at speeds greater than the slow crawl of the Imperial Army's heavy batteries. The Typhon was the result. Many observers have labelled it as little more than an upscaled Vindicator in design, and while in some ways this may be true, few can deny its utterly brutal effectiveness in action. The Legion Mastodon Heavy Assault Transport. The Mastodon is one of the heaviest assault transports in the arsenal of the Legion's Astartes, and one reserved for use against the most heavily fortified positions. Several times the size of a Land Raider, its transport bay can carry up to 40 Space Marines through the most perilous of battlefields, and protect them even from enemy Titans. The Mastodon's primary role is to deliver these troops directly into the breach created with the Siege Melter Array mounted on its armoured prow. Few fortifications can withstand this fearsome weapon, and it is highly unusual for any foe manning such positions to withstand its blinding fires. The legionaries passing through the melted stone, steel and flesh to press directly into the heart of the enemy positions. Although every legion possessed mastodons, they were used only sparingly during the later Great Crusade. Deploying them was a major operation in itself, and so they tended only to be utilised in protracted siege operations, where one or more entire legions had amassed overwhelming force to destroy a foe no other was capable of engaging. As the wars of the Horus Heresy ground onwards, however, these heavy assault transports were used in increasing numbers as both sides committed every last effort to destroy utterly their hated foes. The Sokar Pattern Stormbird. The Stormbird is a dedicated attack lander, developed from the various Warhawk and Nephirus class Stormbird assault transports utilised by the Indonesic bloc during the unification wars on ancient Terra, and adapted by the Emperor for his early legions. The Sokar itself was one of the later patterns developed, and was the design precursor to the smaller, more widely produced Thunderhawk gunship. It was conceived as a specialised, high durability orbital assault craft, almost a mobile bastion and firebase, which could land a Space Marine strike force and withstand heavy ground fire while its passengers forced a landing zone. To this end, the Sokar's design features all-round gun turrets and particularly dense composite armour plating comparable to a main battle tank. It is further protected by void shield generators, which it can extend to protect disembarking troops and war machines. Multiple thruster units ensure that even if several engines are damaged, the Sokar is still airworthy, making it a powerful, if somewhat ungainly flyer. The howl of these huge engines is quite distinctive, even over the din of battle, and along with the bloodshed that follows its appearance, it has earned the Sokar the informal name of the Deathbird among the Imperialist auxilia.